You have a list, it's been open in a tab or folded in a notebook or pinned to the top of your notes app for weeks, maybe months. Every item on it is something you actually want, not something someone forced on you. You chose it. And yet right now, you are doing almost anything else. You call this laziness. You've probably called yourself lazy in the mirror at 1 am, scrolling through a phone you picked up, just for a second, 2 hours ago. But here's the strange part. Lazy people don't usually agonize over unfinished goals at 1 am. Lazy people don't build detailed plans they never start. Lazy people don't feel a low hum of guilt every single day about work they claim not to care about. You care, that's exactly the problem. And the real explanation for what's happening in your brain right now is far stranger and far more logical than you're lazy. Here's the truth this video is going to build, piece by piece. What looks like laziness in an ambitious person is almost never a lack of drive. It's usually one of 4 very different things wearing the same disguise, and none of them mean what you think they mean. Think about how strange this actually is if you step back far enough. A person with no goals doesn't feel guilty about a blank calendar. A person who genuinely doesn't care doesn't lie awake rehearsing the version of their life where they finally started. The guilt itself is evidence. It's the tell. Guilt only shows up when a part of you is still holding the goal, still checking on it, still refusing to let it go, even while another part of you keeps steering the car in a completely different direction. So the real question was never, why don't you want it? You clearly do. The real question is, what is powerful enough inside your own mind to consistently outvote something you genuinely want? And why does that hidden force never once identify itself as the enemy? Let's start with the oldest explanation first, because it goes back further than ambition itself, further than career, further than the idea of a goal even existing as a concept. Your brain did not evolve to maximize your career. It evolved to keep you alive long enough to reproduce, in an environment where calories were scarce, effort was dangerous, and every joule of energy you spent had to be earned back through food you might not find. In that world, a brain that spent energy carelessly was a brain that starved faster than everyone else's. So your brain developed something researchers now call an internal cost-benefit calculator for effort. Before you consciously decide to do almost anything, your brain is running a hidden calculation. How much energy will this cost, and what am I actually going to get back for it? Psychologist Robert Kurzban and his colleagues formalized this into what's known as the opportunity cost model of mental effort. Their research suggests that the discomfort you feel when trying to force yourself through hard, effortful thinking isn't a malfunction. It's a signal, the same kind of signal as physical fatigue, telling you that this activity is consuming a limited resource that could be spent elsewhere. Kurzban's model treats mental effort the way economists treat money, something your brain is constantly, unconsciously trying not to overspend. Here's what that means for you and your open tab full of goals. Your brain isn't asking, is this important to me? It's asking a much colder, older question. Is this worth the energy right now, compared to every other option available? And the moment your phone or your bed or a mindless task offers a lower cost, faster reward, your ancient effort calculator quietly overrides your modern ambition without ever consulting the part of you that wrote that goal list in the first place. That's the first piece, but it's not the whole story, and if it were, this video would end here. It doesn't, because there's a second force at work, one that has nothing to do with energy conservation and everything to do with protecting something much more fragile, how you see yourself. In 1978, psychologists Stephen Berglas and Edward Jones ran an experiment that quietly reshaped how psychologists understand self-sabotage. Participants were given a test and told falsely that they'd done extremely well on a previous round. Then, before taking a second test, they were offered a choice: take a drug that would enhance their performance or take one that would actively impair it. Logically, nobody should choose the drug that makes them worse, but many participants, particularly those who felt uncertain they could repeat their earlier success, chose the impairing drug anyway. Why would anyone deliberately sabotage their own performance? Because failing after taking a performance-impairing drug doesn't threaten your identity. You can tell yourself, I didn't really fail, I was impaired. But failing while trying your absolute hardest with nothing to blame means the failure is entirely, unavoidably about you. Berglas and Jones called this self-handicapping, and it's one of the most well-documented patterns in the psychology of underachievement. You don't need a fake pill to self-handicap. Procrastination works exactly the same way, and it's far more available. If you start that business 3 months from now instead of today and it fails, you can tell yourself you never really gave it your full effort, your full timeline, your full self. The failure stays hypothetical. Your potential stays intact, protected, undefeated, forever unmeasured. This is the quiet, brutal logic hiding underneath, ambitious but lazy. It's not that you don't want the goal. It's that wanting it and never actually testing yourself against it lets you keep believing you'd succeed if you ever really tried. The moment you commit fully and fail anyway, that comforting belief dies. So some part of you would rather protect the belief than risk the outcome. Does that land differently? Then you just need more discipline. Here's where the story gets even more interesting, because not everyone stalling on their goals is stalling for the same reason, and lumping them all together as lazy misses something important. Psychologist Joseph Ferrari has spent over 2 decades studying chronic procrastination, and his research identified that procrastinators generally fall into distinct patterns, not one single lazy blob of behavior. Some are what he calls arousal procrastinators, people who genuinely believe, often correctly, that they work best under the adrenaline of a looming deadline and delay on purpose to manufacture that pressure. Others are avoidant procrastinators, who delay specifically to sidestep the fear of failure or the fear of judgment, exactly the self-handicapping pattern Berglas and Jones documented. And others still are what Ferrari calls decisional procrastinators, people who delay not because they fear the outcome, but because they genuinely cannot decide which path to take and freeze under the weight of too many open options. 3 completely different internal experiences, 3 completely different reasons for the exact same external behavior, an unfinished goal, an open tab, a guilty 1 a.m. scroll. Which means the advice, just start, works for some of these people and does almost nothing for others. Telling an avoidant procrastinator to just start without addressing the fear underneath is like telling someone with a fear of heights to just look down. Telling a decisional procrastinator to just start without helping them actually choose a direction just adds pressure on top of paralysis. So if you've tried motivational advice before and it evaporated within 3 days, that's not further proof that you're lazy. It might be proof that the advice was aimed at the wrong mechanism entirely. There's a 4th piece worth adding here, because it explains something the other 3 don't: why effort itself can start to feel different depending on your history with it. Psychologist Robert Eisenberger spent years researching what he called learned industriousness. His work found that effort isn't simply painful or pleasant in some fixed, universal way. Whether hard work feels rewarding or aversive is shaped by your past experience of it. In Eisenberger's studies, people and animals who were reliably rewarded for effortful work over time came to find that effort itself less unpleasant, sometimes even satisfying, almost like a trained muscle. But when effort was rarely rewarded, or rewarded unpredictably, or worse, punished with criticism, failure, or humiliation, that same effort became something the brain learned to avoid, quietly and automatically, long before you consciously decided anything. Think about what that means for someone who grew up being praised only for outcomes, not effort, or someone whose early attempts at something ambitious were met with public failure, or ridicule, or a cold, unimpressed silence. Their brain isn't being lazy when it avoids trying again. It's applying a lesson, learned early and reinforced repeatedly, that effort in this domain doesn't reliably pay off and might actively cost something. That lesson doesn't need to be true anymore for it to still be running. This is why 2 people can hear the exact same advice, just put in the work, and have completely different nervous systems respond to it. For one person, effort has historically been rewarded, so the advice lands as motivating. For another, effort has historically been risky, so the exact same words trigger something closer to threat detection than inspiration. Now let's put all 4 pieces together, because none of them exist in isolation inside you. Your ancient effort calculator is constantly asking whether a task is worth the energy, compared to the easier, more immediately rewarding alternative sitting right next to it on your phone. Your self-protective instinct is constantly weighing whether trying fully, and possibly failing, is worth risking the comfortable, undefeated version of yourself that still exists in your imagination. Depending on which type of procrastinator you actually are, one of these forces is usually doing most of the damage, quietly, underneath a label you've been calling laziness for years. And running underneath all of it, your personal history with effort has been quietly training your nervous system, for years, to expect either reward or danger every time you consider trying hard at something that matters to you. Picture someone who wants to post their creative work publicly for the first time. Their effort calculator flags the work as costly, hours spent, uncertain payoff. Their self-protective instinct warns that a public failure is far more dangerous to the ego than a private one, so staying unpublished keeps the illusion of, "I'd be great if I actually posted," alive. Their procrastination style, say decisional, means they get stuck endlessly tweaking format and platform instead of choosing one and moving. And their history with effort, if past creative attempts were mocked or ignored, has already taught their nervous system that this specific kind of effort tends to end in pain. 4 separate systems, 4 separate signals, all arriving at the same conclusion: don't post it. Not one of those systems used the word lazy. You did afterward, because it was the only word anyone ever taught you for this feeling. None of that is a character flaw. It's 4 overlapping survival systems, each one that made sense in a different context, all firing at once inside a modern life none of them were built for. Consider what your ancestors' laziness actually protected them from: wasted energy in a world of real caloric scarcity, public failure in a small tribe where reputation could mean the difference between being fed and being abandoned, committing fully to the wrong path in an environment with no way to gather more information before choosing. Every one of these systems was, at some point, a genuinely smart strategy for staying alive. Now look at what they're protecting you from today: a blog post nobody will remember reading a week later, a business idea that, if it fails, costs you some money and some time, not your place in the tribe, a decision that, in the vast majority of cases, can be revised, adjusted, or reversed if it turns out to be wrong. The systems didn't get worse. The stakes did. Your brain simply hasn't been told the difference because there's no mechanism inside it for automatically updating a program that old. There's one more piece of the modern environment worth namming, because it doesn't just fail to help, it actively makes every system above run hotter. Your ancestors compared themselves to maybe 30, 50, 100 people in an entire lifetime. You now compare yourself to a curated highlight reel of millions, updated every time you unlock your phone. Every polished success story you scroll past quietly raises the bar your self-protective instinct thinks it needs to clear before trying feels safe. Every stranger's finished project makes your own unfinished one feel further behind than it actually is. The comparison isn't just discouraging, it's recalibrating your internal risk assessment in real time, convincing your effort calculator that the bar for worth it is higher than it's ever been, right as the actual cost of trying and failing has never been lower. So what do you actually do with this? Not nothing, because understanding a mechanism doesn't dissolve it, but understanding does change your target. Instead of fighting a vague, moralized war against laziness, a war you can't win because you're not entirely sure what you're fighting, you can start asking sharper questions. Is this task genuinely low reward relative to its effort, meaning your ancient calculator might actually be right? And the real fix is redesigning the task, shrinking it, changing its timing, changing its environment, rather than forcing yourself through it by sheer will. Or is this a self-handicapping pattern, where some part of you would rather stay unmeasured than risk finding out your real ceiling, in which case the fix isn't more effort, it's lowering the stakes of trying, making the first attempt small and private enough that failing it costs you almost nothing? Or is this decisional paralysis, where the real block isn't motivation at all, but simply too many open doors and not enough clarity about which one to walk through, in which case the fix is picking any reasonable option and moving, because a mediocre decision made today usually outperforms the perfect decision you're still waiting to identify? Or is this a history of effort gone unrewarded, in which case the fix is deliberately rebuilding the connection between trying and being rewarded, in small, almost embarrassingly modest doses, until your nervous system slowly updates its old, outdated forecast? 4 different problems, 4 different fixes, and exactly 0 of them are solved by calling yourself lazy at 1 am, and hopping shame will somehow motivate a nervous system that's been quietly trying to protect you this entire time. Here's the reframe worth carrying out of this video. The gap between your ambition and your action was never proof that you don't want it badly enough. Wanting it and protecting yourself from the risk of truly trying for it can live in the exact same person at the exact same time without any contradiction at all. That tension isn't a personality defect. It's what it looks like when a brain built for scarcity, reputation, and irreversible choices tries to operate inside a world of abundance, anonymity, and endless second chances. You still have that list, open in a tab or folded in a notebook or pinned to the top of your Notes app. And the next time you catch yourself doing almost anything else instead of the thing you actually want, you don't have to reach for the word lazy anymore. You can ask instead which ancient system just quietly made a decision for you, and whether it's finally time to let this one, in this moment, make a different one.